No one wants to manage databases if they can avoid it. That's why MongoDB made MongoDB Atlas, a global cloud database service that runs on AWS, GCP, and Azure. You can deploy a fully managed MongoDB database in minutes with just a few clicks or a few API calls. MongoDB Atlas automates deployment, automates updates, handles scaling, and more so that you can focus on your application instead of taking care of your database. You can get started free at mongodb.com/atlas. Now, if you're already managing a MongoDB deployment, Atlas has a live migration service, so you can migrate it easily with minimal downtime and then get back to what matters. Stop managing your database and start using MongoDB Atlas. Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hanselminutes. Today I'm talking with Alex Tramiel. He's the founder and CEO of Sandman, sandmanclocks.com, and the inventor of the Doppler, which is one of my most favorite things. It's an Alexa-enabled alarm clock. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm living the dream. I'm thrilled to be chatting with you because I'm excited about how people make stuff.
Sure.
And for clarity and for full disclosure, I am a backer of the Kickstarter. So when I saw the Sandman Doppler, the alarm clock evolved, show up on Kickstarter some year ago or two, I just threw my money at it and I said, I want this. I want the world's best alarm clock. That is the only relationship that I have with y'all. I'm a fan. So then now as you're pre-ordering and people can order the clock now, I'm like, this is a great opportunity to call Alex and figure out how y'all made this thing.
Well, I really appreciate it. And thank you again for your support.
Yeah. So this is going to go a little weird, but in the late 80s, I bought a clock radio telephone. And that was like, this is pre-iPhone, pre-anything. And it was like a multi-function joy. And I would run around and be like, it's a clock and a radio and a telephone. You know what I mean? It was like, I felt so powerful because I had this multi-function device. So when I saw the smart clock, the Sandman Doppler, it evoked that excitement about a device that like wasn't an Alexa, but it was a multifunction thing that was also in fact an Alexa.
Mm-hmm. We kind of have three products rolled into one, and we think that it's the perfect device to live on your nightstand. And we have to be a little careful because there's certain sexual things that happen when you start talking about the bedroom and the nightstand and that sort of stuff. So we choose our words carefully, but when you have a device that's sitting on your nightstand, it should do more than one thing. When you wake up in the middle of the night, you want to see what time it is. You should have big, easy to read letters that don't blast you with extra light like a cell phone or an Echo Show or anything like that. And you need to charge all of your various devices. I mean, it's 2020. You have 8 million devices. I charge 5 on my bedstand every night or nightstand every night. So we need a clock, which also has USB ports. And then we need to have some sort of smart home integration. So we threw an Echo or an Alexa in there, and now we have the ability to play music, control your smart home, have stupid, corny jokes, spoken to you, listen to NPR in the morning with your flash briefing. And we just think it's the perfect alarm clock evolved or nightstand accessory.
Mm-hmm. Before I got my beta version of this as part of the Kickstarter and ongoing kind of testing of the device early on, it was about a year ago, I had a big old-fashioned LED clock. Mm-hmm. I had an Alexa Echo, and I had a really nice AM/FM radio. Like I forgot the name of it. One of those big, heavy ones. And so this literally has replaced 3 separate devices for my nightstand. So that's not like an advertisement. That's a real thing that happened. It was kind of cool.
You need to get a before and after shot.
We do, actually. I really did. I was like, oh, well, I guess all these things will go into other rooms now. I don't even have to.
You have a power strip on your bed as well with all your chargers.
I actually did. See, now you're making me feel bad. You're right. Actually, it replaces 4 things. I had a power strip, a massive power strip, and I was always going back and forth between like, is this the half an amp one, or is this the one that'll actually do an iPad? Mm-hmm. Which is a huge problem.
Yeah. So our first product, our first Sandman clock, which was released a couple years ago, we call it the Sandman clock or the original Sandman clock. It was really simple: 4 USB ports, one fast charging USB port, and a big clock. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
$50 is what we originally sold it for, and then it got down in price to about 20 over the years. And they had one fast charging port, and we decided, we really need to up this. So we moved to 6, and I think 6 is a little excessive, but there's going to be someone that wants a 7th. So 6 was what worked well with, power requirements and size and that sort of stuff. So we stuck with 6. But yeah, the notion of replacing things that have been sitting next to people's beds for years is quite difficult. People are attached to their alarm clock, or they're attached to now using their cell phone as an alarm clock. And when they see the word alarm clock, they're like, oh, I just use my cell phone for the alarm clock. And I'm like, oh yeah, I do too. I created an alarm clock. That's what I've been doing for the last 5 years of my life. And I use my cell phone because it works fine. But how do you charge your cell phone? And if you wake up in the middle of the night and you tap your screen a couple times, you get blasted by the lights. And even if it's, an OLED display, it still puts out extra light into the room. And I don't want that. So that's why we created the Doppler, and call it, a cell phone extension, cleaning up your nightstand and replacing 3 or sometimes 4 devices.
Now, hopefully you won't be offended by this, but it is big. It is extra. It is unapologetic. Like when I got it, I was like, oh, wow, this is like a thing. You know what I mean? Like it's got weight. It's got big speakers. This is like, it kind of evokes the quality of like a Bose or a Bang & Olufsen kind of a device. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's 130% larger than I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing for sound quality, which is why it's that big. We wanted the screen, the display, to be big, and you can see it if you wear glasses and you don't have glasses on, or you don't have great vision, or you wake up and you're groggy and you got those sleepers in your eyes. We want to be able to see the numbers, and that makes it a certain size. And then we have some, we call dashboard display features on the top and the bottom. I mean, we have a light bar on top, then we have display features on the bottom. And then we want it to have really good sound. And sound requires a large amount of air volume in order to move that sound. And we have that bass port in the back, which allows sound to be pushed out. And that's all good things. Now, the bad thing is that it's pretty difficult to market. And it's really hard to show how big it is because everyone's nightstands are different sizes. So we need to work on that with our positioning now that we are shipping. And we will work on that as time goes on. But, we've tried adding the AR to our website, and it actually works really well. And it's live on our site right now on our Shopify store. But you can't really feel the thing until you feel the thing. We have a nice soft touch coating on it, and calling it unapologetically huge is awesome.
Yeah. So. I mean, I actually like made room for it. I was like, oh, I'll just put this cute little thing on my nightstand. I'll forget about it. And I was like, this is like this deserves this place of honor. It is now taken over the nightstand. So I moved other things out of the way to make this thing, possible, because it's now the smartest thing in my room.
Besides you, of course.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, that's arguable, but
sure.
Indeed. And the amount of power, it's interesting. It's got a really powerful, the brick, the power brick. Yeah, so I'm charging everything fast on this. And then there's there's 6 USB charging ports. And I thought you were very prescient, even a couple of years ago when USB-C wasn't really, like, people hadn't decided on it yet. There's the ability to swap out and put in USB-C for 3 of those ports. Was that a risk?
It was a risk, and so I worked for Apple in 2007 at the Apple Store when the first iPhone launched, and I've been pretty cognizant of Android phones and iPhones, and luckily those are the only 2 big ecosystems at the moment. But the whole charging port thing has just been fascinating and honestly kind of frustrating, because there are so many different USB standards and so many different types of USB that your average consumer doesn't really understand. So we get these questions: does it have USB 3? And it's like, Well, actually, USB 3 is a data communication protocol and completely unrelated. And so, no, it doesn't have USB 3 because it doesn't need it. And then we get, does it have USB C? And then you have this whole other thing. Does it have USB C PD? Does it have quick charge? Does it have blah, blah, blah? So what we did is we saw the writing on the wall when we first developed it. And we said, you know what we need to do is we need to have a upgradable port option. Mm-hmm. So we have these two banks of ports, and in the middle is the main power connector, which goes to your, in this case, the 96 watt power adapter. And it needs to be 96 watts because of, if you have all 6 devices charging full power and you have all the lights, there's 136 individual RGB LEDs in this product. Yes, 136. It's ridiculous. And then you have the speakers, and this thing can pull a lot of power. So that's why that power brick is also huge. But we decided to have those upgradable ports, and we kind of waffled what makes the most sense. And over the course of development, things changed a couple times, but what we ended up settling on is we will pre-install the USB-C upgrade, and the USB-C upgrade is actually user upgradable and user installable. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. And that's because like I said, I charge 5 devices and only one of them is USB-C. And you can have a USB-A to USB-C cable, and that will charge almost any USB-C device. But then you have, MacBooks and Nintendo Switches and stuff that require a lot more power. And then you need a more dedicated USB-C to USB-C cable. And everyone's kind of in this transition period. And when we first launched, the transition period was basically only for high-end flagship Android phones. And then Apple's like, no, we're going to put USB-C on the iPad Pro. And that kind of started moving. And then Apple just released the iPhone 12, where they appear to maybe just be going away from Lightning in general and going to wireless charging, which we, of course, can plug in through a USB-A or a USB-C port. So we're in this kind of weird middle ground. There was a period of time where it was much easier. It was either micro USB or Lightning, and that's it. And they both used USB-A. It was a true standard. And now it's kind of shifted, and we have these two competing standards which work together but don't quite, and that's USB-A and USB-C. So having that upgradability, I think actually reduced risk and mitigated risk for us because we have the ability to upgrade it. And we're actually looking at putting some other upgrades in that port or in that kind of bay in the future.
Nice. Yeah, it made me feel more like it was a geek thing.
Sure.
I know it's a consumer electronics piece of product, but you don't hide the screws in the back. You're not trying to say, hey, don't open this, you'll void the warranty. Like if you want to swap that bay out for the upgrade, you can do that. Or of course you can just buy the version that you sell that has 3 USB-C and 3 USB-A. So you win either way.
Absolutely. And that's really what we want for the customer is the customer experience is really important to us. And if you buy this thing in 2020 and then Apple on the iPhone 13 or whatever the heck they call it adds a USB-C connector, and only bundles a C-to-C cable, I'd be pissed as a customer. So, actually they bundled a C to Lightning on the iPhone 12. So
right.
We're just trying to make sure we do everything we can to make the customer as happy as possible. And the geek comment, absolutely. I mean, people that buy super smart alarm clocks are geeks. And they're the best kind of geeks. And I'm not even talking about, catering to your audience. It's the right thing to do. And that's really what's important to us.
So it's got a whole light bar across the top. It's got Alexa built in, like an Echo. Is there a computer inside this? Like it has firmware that upgrades itself?
Yeah, so there's a full Yocto-based Linux box in there. It uses an NXP IMX6ULL processor. We also have a Cypress microcontroller, and the microcontroller controls the lights, the buttons, and the light sensor. And then the Yocto Linux machine handles the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and communicates with Amazon servers. And then we have an over-the-air update solution where the host processor can be updated and then update the microcontroller and the DSP that's also in the product. So got 3 pieces of silicon in there. It's actually pretty advanced for an alarm clock, but we're hoping to utilize some more of those features in the future.
Hey friends, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, Text Control. They're not only the creator of the fully featured document editor library for .NET and Angular apps, but their libraries also have powerful PDF functionality. So you don't have to program PDF documents. You can make MS Word templates and then merge them with data, and that'll let you create pixel-perfect PDF and PDF/A documents. The best part is fillable form elements like text boxes and checkbox fields and drop-down elements, and you can add those easily to your PDFs and make filling out forms really simple for your users. And don't forget, TX Text Control gives developers a complete solution to handle PDF documents in any business process. So check it out. You can try it free. See the live demos at textcontrol.com/demos. Just that easy. textcontrol.com/demos. One of the things that I wanted to dig into that I don't hear a lot about, so this doesn't end up being like a 30-minute advertisement about how Scott's excited about this product.
I'm okay with that, for the record.
I know you are excited about this. But what I want to understand is, how do you get something like this built? Like, do you conceive of it, sketch it out, fly to another country or fly to a manufacturer in the US to try to figure out how to make it? What's the manufacturing process like as you conceive of and then now are actually shipping a thing?
Yeah, that is such a loaded question. There are so many ways to do it. There's a couple ways to kind of tackle that question. And, you can do the kind of classic approach, the classic Silicon Valley approach, I should say, where you have an idea, you sketch it on a napkin, and then you hire someone to make a prettier sketch. You go and you raise venture capital funding, and then you build a company around making that product. That kind of approach, I don't want to say is dead, but it's a lot more work than most people can tackle. The next way to do it is to hire a design firm. And we do some of that on the side. Palo Alto Innovation is the parent company of Sandman. And Palo Alto Innovation has a design firm kind of wing called Pi Labs, where we've done some design firm stuff for other people. The coolest thing we've done is we have a radiation detecting dosimeter on the International Space Station right now, which
Cool.
I can talk about at length. That was super awesome. But you can do that. And that's actually where I came from. I came from a product design firm. Where, you have an idea and then you go to an industrial designer and you say, okay, here's what I want it to look and feel like and how I want it to act. And then that industrial designer goes to a mechanical and electrical engineer and they create the drawings. And then you basically send it overseas or a domestic vendor to get it manufactured. That's one way. And then what we did is kind of in between. And what that is, we have industrial designers, electrical and mechanical engineers in-house. And we designed basically everything from scratch. We wrote all the software, we wrote all the firmware. We bought a system on module that Yocto-based, or I should say IMX 6ULL-based SOM. Took the example images of that, wrote some edits to some drivers, threw everything together, created our own circuit board, and then worked very closely with a manufacturer overseas in Shenzhen, where we got the thing manufactured to our exact specifications. Mm-hmm. And then the last kind of way to do it, and this is what's becoming a lot more common these days, is effectively going on Alibaba, finding a product which is similar, getting it tweaked somehow or some way by the manufacturer. And that might just be as simple as throwing your label on it and then getting it shipped to you and selling it on Amazon. And there are pluses and minuses and benefits and, subtractions to all of these different ways to do things. And it is really, really, really difficult. I can't explain how hard it is. Like, it takes so much work to make the simplest product. There are so many details and it's super capital intensive and it's really difficult to do at any scale, whether you're a big company or a small company. And these large companies pumping out software, or I should say hardware releases annually, like, it takes so much money and it's so difficult and it's not easy to compete with those guys.
how do the margins even work on something like that? Like, let's say, like, like I mentioned, and like an early beta, the Doppler, like the screen had some like light buffing scratches on it. And I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned it to you and you're like, oh yeah, well, we're going to solve that. That's a manufacturing issue. And then the next one just looked perfect. So if you have enough of those kind of like revisions, is that meaning you're throwing away 10 or 50 of these things as you kind of fight with the manufacturer and quality assurance?
I wish it was only 10 or 50. No, absolutely. Margins are really hard. And a consumer electronic product, especially with the big dogs in the market, the Amazon and the Googles, it's really hard to compete. So you have to find a niche which is not being utilized by one of those big guys. Like if I tried to make a Echo knockoff, we would get demolished just by sheer volume. Like Amazon in particular has they're basically full stack. They create the AI voice assistant, they create the hardware, and then they sell it. I maybe possibly could do one of those three things better than Amazon. But just with sheer amount of manpower and experience, there's no way I could get the AI as good as they can. And there's absolutely no way I could create an e-commerce platform as good as Amazon, just because they've been around for so long and have so many, visitors. So you need to find a good niche. And then the other thing is you need to accept that you're going to have yield problems. And so like right now we're going through and reflashing all these Dopplers with the latest version of firmware. And
Yeah, I got mine like a month ago.
yeah, so we have to go through and do a double check, and we're finding various issues, and that's to be expected. That 1% return rate, which you kind of aim for, is after you've gone through multiple levels of QA. And you need to find a manufacturer which is willing to work with you and understands this is going to happen. They have to understand that manufacturing is hard and you're going to screw up, and you need to just iterate many, many, many times before you even send it to the manufacturer to make sure that things are going to be as smooth as possible. And a lot of the time it's just faith, hoping things are going to work, and you've put in the necessary work. And we did, and things are shipping now, and I'm very happy with how they're going.
Yeah, I mean, mine was very well put together, and I'm very happy with the build quality. I was impressed that the firmware is updated multiple times. There's an app on the iPhone that I can control it with. I haven't had to do anything. One of the things that I appreciate is that, like with a with a freaking light bulb in my house, I have to go and run an app and update the firmware.
Sure.
I like that I haven't had to think about it. I don't want to have a to-do list where it's like, honey, update the firmware on the clock radio.
Yeah.
It just gets better. Are there plans for like an SDK or for the ability to control the LEDs at the top?
Yeah. So we want to have as many open developer features as possible. And we're trying to kind of straddle that line between super easy for anyone non-techie to use, but also as open as possible for anyone who knows what the word SDK means or API, and they can use it. So that light bar on the top, there's 29 RGB LEDs, and we want those to be. I'm sure there's something that I haven't thought of. I guarantee there's something that I haven't thought of, which could be really awesome on that light bar. And then we have 2 7-segment displays on the bottom right-hand corner, which are designed to show the weather. I don't actually know if yours are active yet, but they will be soon. You're going to have to set your zip code or your address, and then you're going to be able to see the weather. But maybe you don't want that to say the weather. Maybe you want that to be a countdown for, your kid's graduation or something. I don't know. And I want that to
I actually have a use case. I have a
please.
Use case.
Let's hear the Hanselman case.
Okay, here's the Hanselman use case. Pivot the entire company to this use case. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, as folks know, and I have a number of implants, and I have an open source project that I use called Night Scout, which means that I have a REST API for my body. I want to use the display LEDs across the top to show my blood sugar, green, yellow, or red.
I love that. Oh my God.
And I want to maybe have like a Zapier or like
Zapier, yeah.
Zapier, and I want to basically Zapier the clock, and like every 5 or 10 minutes update. I'll call one REST API, and then I'll tell the Doppler to tell me if my blood sugar is high. So then when I glance at the auto dimming LED display, I see the time and my blood sugar in the middle of the night.
Would you? First of all, I love that.
Collabo.
I
We're
love
doing it.
that. That's amazing. I I can't. Okay, we're pivoting the entire company, Scott. You've convinced me. Um,
Yes.
Question though, and
Yeah.
this is coming from someone who is not type 1 diabetic.
Yeah, sure.
Would you prefer an actual number, or do you not care about the number? You just care if things
Yeah,
are.
that's a great question. Is there a number display that's not the clock? Is there
There
a number
is.
somewhere else?
There is. So in the bottom
How
right
high
hand
does that number
corner,
go?
so it goes to 199.
So the diabetics can have blood sugar over 200,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess if I could have it go to 199 and then if afterwards I would just say like high,
Mm.
or I'd
Yep, you
like
can do
I
that.
could basically make it say HI.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably want both that number and the
Sure.
colorful. I love the colorful lights. Like I have a what's called a Pi portal, a Python portal from Adafruit. It's just a little
Yep,
tiny
I'm familiar.
3x3 display, and it just turns yellow, green, and red, and
Okay.
lets me know my blood sugar. So it's basically like you're cool. Hey, you're getting up there. Hey, you should probably do something.
Mm-hmm.
The number would be ideal. It would be lovely, but that would just be gravy.
And of course, the number is also RGB, so we could have the color there
the
match.
Number could change color. Oh, that would be. Yeah, now you're just showing off.
Well, and of course, you can get even higher and set a threshold to where it starts flashing at you if things are really bad. And then
all of that would be amazing.
We have a buzzer inside, and we have speakers, and these are the kind of things that we want to have the ability to do in the future. And we've had a pretty rough development, as you can see if you go and look at our Kickstarter. Everything is public. I find that really, really, really important. There's nothing behind a paywall. I guarantee you there's people that have not backed us that have been following along. And it's really important to add these sort of extra features, which are going to be super useful for a smaller portion of our customer base, but are life-changing. And we want to have that ability. So we're trying to find the right balance, as I said, of, developing features for the less techie or giving the developer community the ability to add new features. So we are developing a REST API. We're actually going to be using it internally, and we're switching away from BLE communication to a MQTT/REST API communication for cloud support. And so that's coming soon. And then we're going to be able to leverage that REST API, or I should say developers will leverage that REST API to add the Hanselman. I'm trying to figure out a good name. Hansel Tracker. Hansel Sugar. Sugar Tracker.
There you go. It's just the ability to do that, because that number could be air quality from an Aware device.
Absolutely.
It could be whether you left the garage door open and it turns red if the garage door is open. It could be whether or not a ring spotted someone. It could be red if there's someone wandering around in your backyard.
Sure.
There's so many things you could do.
Yeah,
it's a smart hub.
Exactly. And that's, we want an at a glance display. You could have an Echo Show on your nightstand, and the Echo Show is an incredible device. It's
gorgeous.
Amazing.
It's a screen. I don't need another screen.
Exactly. And you just want to be able to glance. What we have on our Kickstarter, what we advertise is calendar, clock, and traffic. And that's good for most people. But we've had a surprising number of people ask for a garbage day reminder.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm like, all right, I usually tell if the garbage needs to be let out just by my nose, but maybe that's not a good thing anyway either. So everyone has a different use case which they latch onto and they love. And we definitely want to open it up and allow these people to come up with awesome things. Not necessarily to sell more product, but to make the product as useful as possible.
Before we let you go, as we get towards the end here, I do want to touch on the Kickstarter a little bit, because Kickstarter is a place to kickstart products.
They should call it that.
It's kind of a Kickstarter, but somehow people seem to think that it's a store, and when something takes a year or two, like you've got on your, again, public Kickstarter in your posts, a post here that says, as 2019 comes to a close, where is my Doppler? And you're very thoughtful, and you're like, yeah, we missed a deadline. Here's what's going on, blah, blah, blah. You're like literally go into exquisite detail about some of the PCBs that were going on. You have a photograph of the warehouse. You talk about certifications. Like, you explain where the Doppler is. Now here we are a year later, and you're getting ready to ship. You're the Rona happened, and you dealt with that with elegance. How many people get that this is a product and it takes time, versus how many people are like, I gave you my $100 a year ago and now you're ripping me off and you've run away with my money.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to tiptoe around this without pissing people off, because it's hard, and I
It is
get
hard.
I get it. In general, people have been very supportive. Now, of course, the angrier people kind of rise to the top. You know, they say cream rises to the top, and I assume that's true in some situations. But when you have a crowd, and the angry ones tend to be the loudest, and you know, if you're not willing to wait and kickstart and help us through this and give, you know, patience and support, that's your prerogative. You know, you can do what you want. Kickstarter is not a store. And they tried to make that abundantly clear. I think Kickstarter themselves have some issues which they could work on. And I assume that they'd say the same thing. But like, there's a couple ways to look at it. And I'm going to ramble here and I apologize. But the Kickstarter creator end is, it's not hard to communicate with your customers. I understand. Mm-hmm. I totally get from a personal viewpoint. Like if someone yells at you and calls you a scam artist and, you know, starts swearing at you and says, I gave you my $100 3 years ago, where the F is my product. I totally get that. But like, I don't want to talk to those people, but you have to. You have to deliver that amount of customer service. And if you do, the vast majority of people are going to understand. So that's from the Kickstarter creator side. And from the Kickstarter backer side, like if you want to just buy a product, go to Amazon and buy a product. If you want to watch a product grow and want to have a say on what happens and learn and enjoy it, then by all means, like back Kickstarters, but do it smartly. I understand that I have a background in this. I can spot a bad Kickstarter in 10 seconds. It's not difficult.
I don't have a background in this, but I'm looking at my backed products. You can go to Kickstarter and look at your backed products.
Yeah.
And I have 27 backed products. 2 are unsuccessful.
Sure.
So I have a 25 out of 27.
That's pretty good.
I think it's pretty good because I think of it as an investment platform where I get cool stuff if I get it right.
And it's cool stuff that you kind of had a hand in making. And it's awesome.
That'll go on my resume.
And I mean, there are some projects which fail and they're not, you know, they either didn't communicate with the customers well or things just happened. Like, and we can go into this at another point, but like there are lots of like the Coolest Cooler, for example, I think is probably the most interesting Kickstarter that's ever happened because they failed because they were too big.
Right. This was a smart cooler that had literally everything.
Yeah.
And it would drive awesome. You to the event, and it had Bluetooth, and it had, you know.
Yeah, it would, give you a massage and blah, blah, blah. No, but like they raised $14 million. And, you know, when you raise $14 million and then, you know, one person gets pissed off and then another person gets pissed off and you make a couple of mistakes, which they made around their, you know, their manufacturing bill of materials cost, it's going to end really poorly. And it just sucks. But like posting the I'm invoking my Kickstarter terms of service and making class action law, nothing's going to happen. You did not buy a product. You pledged for a product. And as long as both the creator and the backer have goodwill involved and are trying to deliver the thing that you pledged for, things will be fine.
You know, actually, I would even go so far as to say, if I may, I pledged to help out a company start itself. I pledged a Kickstarter product. But what I feel like I'm really paying for are the updates. I'm not mad that the product didn't show up. I'm mad when they don't update it every month and tell me what's up. When they tell me stuff like, here's our pictures from our trip to Shenzhen, I'm like, oh, trip report. Woo! Like now I feel like I'm getting value. That's what I want. I want to know about diagrams.
Have you been to Shenzhen?
No, man. I followed Naomi Wu on YouTube, and she like will walk you around the mall and show you Shenzhen. It looks like amazing,
dude.
I've been to Beijing, but I haven't been to Shenzhen.
It is the coolest place. It is like I'm born and raised
of all electronics, right?
Oh yeah, like I'm born and raised in Silicon Valley, and it's I cannot get, like I was there about a year ago this time, and I cannot get over how cool it was. It was so cool. Now there's some problems with it, of course, but it was amazing. The electronics mall, Washong Bay is what it's called. I could spend a month there easily.
Yeah, I've been to like low rent versions of those.
Sure.
I've been to like there's one in every town, right?
Yeah.
But like been in the one in Kuala Lumpur is really impressive. And it's just like, okay, we've walked around for 5 hours. I think we've exhausted this one. And then you turn a corner and you're like,
There's
oh,
a whole other
there's another whole building with 5 more, floors of the same thing.
It's unreal.
Yeah, it is unreal.
Yeah. So the comments and the updates, you need to respond to those fast. And if you do, people will be understanding. We have about 1,500 backers or so, which is a decent number. It's not, I'm not going to get rich off of it, and that's fine, but it's a good way to kickstart a business. And I think I've given away, or not given away, I think I've refunded maybe 100 people. And like, I'm willing to do refunds. If people aren't happy and they're not willing to wait, by all means. And what we end up doing is we end up usually kind of sharing the fees that Kickstarter and Stripe have taken. And that's a fine solution. I would rather not lose any money on a backer, but if I'm losing a couple bucks and getting rid of someone who doesn't want to go through this process with me, that's their prerogative, and that's better for me. So just be open and honest with your backers, and this goes for all comments on the internet. Please try and remember that there are people that you are physically talking to that are reading these nasty trolly comments that you make.
I've been doing YouTube a lot lately, and it's like,
man.
I keep trying to remind them, like, hey, I'm a person.
Yeah.
Like, alone in my room recording YouTubes for you for free. So be nice.
Yeah, it's hard, and I get it, but like, there's no point in going and complaining to someone who's doing an honest effort.
Return their money and move on to the next thing. I'm thrilled with mine. Again, we have no relationship, you and I. We've only just met, but I'm a fan, and I'm a fan of cool products that do cool stuff. I love that there's 3 different silicon boards in there. I love that there's an app. I love that there's a ridiculous amount of power that this thing can push out. I charge my iPad. I charge my iPhone. I charge my Nintendo Switch. I charge my open source artificial pancreas on the Doppler. I'm not joking. Like,
sorry, I've never heard those words before.
Open source artificial pancreas. Yes. In fact, I charge a thing called a Riley link, which I use to run my blood sugar. It's an open source. Well, we'll talk about that later, but yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. But I'm charging my life on this thing. The cords come nice and underneath the front of the device. Here's a funny thing that I've had this thing for a year. I didn't know it was auto dimming the display. It just is always the right dimness. I noticed it literally last week.
Really?
Because I came in and it was like, oh, there's the display. And I turned the light on, and for a moment it's too dim because I just turned the light on. And then it goes, ooh. And I'm like, when did they add that?
It's been there since day one.
Exactly. And that's the kind of, it just blends into the background. It's like a Bose quality or Bang & Olufsen quality audio. It's very good. It's there now, and I love it. It's massive, and it takes over my entire nightstand. And I hope that people check it out and enjoy it. And if they don't want to enjoy the Doppler, they can certainly go and buy the last couple of the mini, the Sandman, which is now $20 up on sandmanclocks.com.
Let me know when if the YouTube thing doesn't work out. We have a sales position for you.
Well, Alex, I really appreciate you chatting with me today.
Thank you. It's been a blast. And we can talk about open source artificial pancreases in the future.
Fantastic. This has been another episode of Hanselminutes, and we'll see you again next week.